The rain came down in sheets that night, the kind of California downpour that turns freeways into rivers and makes even the bravest drivers pull over and wait it out. But Emma Hartley wasn't brave. She was broke. And broke meant you didn't get to pull over. Broke meant you kept driving white-knuckling a steering wheel in a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a heater that had died somewhere around Modesto and windshield wipers that had maybe one more storm left in them before they gave up entirely. 22 years old, and Emma had learned one fundamental truth about life. Nobody was coming to save you. Not the state, not the foster families who signed up for the monthly checks and taught you real quick that love was a word people used when they wanted something from you. Not the social workers who moved you from house to house like you were a piece of furniture they couldn't quite find the right spot for. You saved yourself, or you didn't. Those were the only two options. The delivery scanner mounted to her dashboard beeped its blue glow reflecting off the rain-smeared windshield. Premium overnight courier service. That's what the company called it. What it really meant was driving alone through the darkest hours of the night, delivering sealed packages to places most people had never heard of, for clients who paid extra to make sure nobody asked questions. Tonight's cargo was simple enough. Legal documents, corporate contracts bound for some office park on the outskirts of Bakersfield. The kind of paperwork that apparently couldn't wait until morning. The kind that came with a $500 bonus if she delivered it before 6 a.m. $500 meant rent. It meant groceries that weren't ramen and dollar store bread. It meant maybe, just maybe, getting her car's heater fixed before winter really set in. So Emma drove, through the rain, through the dark, through every instinct screaming at her to turn around. The navigation app had started glitching about 20 miles back, right around the time she'd passed the last functioning streetlight. Now it kept rerouting her down progressively narrower roads, taking her away from anything that looked like civilization and deeper into an industrial wasteland of abandoned warehouses and rusting equipment yards. She'd tried manually overriding it twice. Both times the app had frozen, completely forcing her to restart her phone. By the third attempt, she'd given up. The app claimed it knew a faster route. Emma needed faster. The clock on her dashboard read 2:14 a.m. Her headlights swept across a landscape that looked like the skeleton of something that used to matter. Corrugated metal buildings with caved-in roofs, parking lots where weeds had broken through asphalt, reclaiming the earth one crack at a time. Chain-link fences that had been cut open and left to rust in whatever shape gravity pulled them toward. This was where things came to die, Emma thought. Businesses, dreams, people probably if you went looking in the right shadows. She took a sharp right turn onto an unmarked access road, her tires hydroplaning slightly on the waterlogged pavement. The Civic's frame shuddered, rattling in that way that meant something expensive was wrong, but not quite wrong enough to stop functioning. Not yet. That's when her high beams caught it. At first, Emma's brain couldn't process what she was seeing. The image was too wrong, too out of place. A motorcycle. But not just any motorcycle. A custom Harley-Davidson Road Glide, the kind of machine that cost more than Emma had earned in her entire life, twisted onto its side like a broken toy. The front wheel was bent at an angle that made her stomach turn. Oil slicked across the wet pavement, creating rainbow patterns in her headlights. And then she saw the smoke. Not the thick black smoke of a fire, but the thin gray tendrils of something still cooling, still dying. Emma's foot hit the brake without conscious thought. The Civic fish-tailed tires screaming against wet asphalt before the car jerked to a stop at an angle that blocked half the narrow road. Her heart was hammering. Every survival instinct she'd developed over 14 years in the foster system was screaming a single word: run. Call 911 from somewhere safe, somewhere far away. This wasn't her problem. Whatever had happened here, whoever was involved, it had nothing to do with her. But then the headlights shifted as her car settled and Emma saw him. A man, enormous. He was propped against a concrete road barricade about 20 feet from the destroyed motorcycle, and even slouched and broken, he looked like something carved from stone. Denim and leather covered a frame that had to be 6'3", maybe 6'4". His chest was broad enough that Emma's first thought was that he looked like the kind of person you cross the street to avoid. His vest was leather heavy and worn. Even through the rain and the dark, Emma could make out the patches. The curved top rocker, the bottom rocker reading California, and in the center, unmistakable, even at this distance, a grinning death's head logo, Hell's Angels. Emma's hand was already reaching for her phone for the door lock, for anything that would put more distance between her and whatever nightmare she'd stumbled into. But before she could move, before she could think, she heard it. A sound that cut through the drumming rain and the ticking of the cooling motorcycle engine, and every rational thought in Emma's head. A baby crying. Not just one, two. Two thin, desperate wails that sounded like they were coming from somewhere near the man's body. Emma's breath caught in her chest. No, no, this wasn't happening. This wasn't real. But the crying continued, high-pitched and terrified and so achingly familiar that Emma felt something crack open inside her chest, something she'd spent 6 years learning how to keep sealed shut. Her hand was on the door handle. She didn't remember deciding to open it, didn't remember stepping out into the freezing rain, didn't remember grabbing the heavy Maglite flashlight from her glove compartment. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended, barely audible over the storm. She tried again louder, calling out toward the wreckage, and the man and those terrible, heartbreaking cries. Emma's boots splashed through puddles as she moved closer, the flashlight beam cutting through the rain. 20 feet became 15. 15 became 10. And that's when the full horror of the scene revealed itself. The man wasn't just injured from the motorcycle crash. He'd been shot. Dark, dark red stained the left side of his leather vest, spreading down his side and pooling on the concrete beneath him. The blood mixed with rainwater, diluting into pink streams that ran toward a nearby storm drain. But he was conscious. His eyes pale blue and sharp, despite the obvious pain, tracked Emma's movement. And clutched in his arms, shielded by his body and his leather jacket, were 2 infant car seats. Inside those seats, strapped in and covered with blankets that were somehow still mostly dry, were 2 babies. Twins, Emma realized. A boy and a girl, neither one older than maybe 6 months, both of them crying, their tiny faces red and scrunched with fear. The man's right hand moved, and Emma saw the gun. A revolver, heavy and dark, rising to point directly at her chest. His hand was shaking, covered in silver skull rings that caught the flashlight beam. His voice was a rasp, wet and rattling in a way that meant serious internal damage. Punctured lung, maybe? Emma had seen enough medical dramas to recognize the sound of someone drowning in their own blood. He told her to step back, his words barely coherent through the pain. Emma's hands went up automatically, the flashlight pointed toward the ground. She tried to explain that she wasn't a threat, that she'd just driven by and seen the crash, that he was bleeding badly and needed an ambulance. The man blinked, his focus drifting for a second before snapping back to Emma's face. His words came out thick, choked. He said they'd taken her, that they'd shot Sarah, that they'd come for the kids. Emma asked who? Who had done this? Who would attack a man on a motorcycle with 2 babies? The baby's crying intensified. The little boy's wail was sharper, more insistent. The girl's was softer, but somehow more heartbreaking, like she was crying herself toward exhaustion. The man coughed and blood spattered from his lips onto the wet concrete. He gave his name, Mike Donovan. Said people called him Iron Mike. Emma would learn later that this name carried weight up and down the West Coast. That Mike Donovan wasn't just any member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. He was the sergeant at arms for the Bakersfield charter, the enforcer, the man other dangerous men respected and feared in equal measure. But right now, in this moment, he just looked like a father dying while trying to protect his children. Emma's voice was steadier, now falling into that strange calm that comes when a situation is so far beyond normal that panic becomes useless. She said she would call an ambulance, that he needed a hospital, that the babies needed help. The word came out as a roar that cost him. Mike doubled over, coughing violently, more blood spraying onto the pavement. When he looked up again, his face had gone a shade paler. He repeated it. No cops, no hospitals. Calling 911 would kill them all. Emma asked what he was talking about. Mike's bloody hand shot out faster than should have been possible for someone in his condition and grabbed the front of Emma's rain jacket. He pulled her down to his level, close enough that she could smell the copper tang of blood mixed with motor oil and leather. The cops did this, he told her. Each word was agony. Detective Garrison and his task force. They kicked down his door. They shot his wife in front of his kids. They're the ones who ran him off the road. Emma stared at him. This had to be shock talking. Delusion from blood loss. Cops didn't just execute people's wives. That didn't happen in real life. But then she heard it. The distant roar of high-performance engines. Her head snapped up, and through the curtain of rain she saw them. Maybe half a mile down the straight stretch of road coming fast. 3 black SUVs, their LED headlights cutting through the storm like searchlights. Mike's grip on her jacket loosened. The gun in his other hand dipped toward the ground. He said they were coming back to finish it. Told her to leave him. Just take Leo and Lily, please. Emma looked at the approaching headlights. Looked at Mike, his eyes already starting to glaze over. Looked at the 2 terrified babies who were definitely going to die out here if she left them. She'd grown up in the system. She knew exactly what happened to children. Nobody wanted children. Nobody fought for. She'd been one of them for 14 years, passed from home to home, accumulating trauma like other kids collected birthday presents. And she'd promised herself after the last time after Anna that she would never let herself care enough to hurt like that again. But these babies, these tiny, helpless babies who hadn't done anything wrong except be born to the wrong father at the wrong time. Emma made a decision that would change everything. She told Mike to put the gun away, her voice finding a core of steel she didn't know she had. She said they were all leaving, right now. Mike told her she couldn't carry him, that he weighed 250 and she was maybe $120 soaking wet. Emma grabbed the front of his vest and hauled upward with everything she had. Told him to shut up and use his legs. Adrenaline was a hell of a drug. So was whatever had broken open in her chest when she'd heard those babies crying. Mike groaned a sound of pure agony, but he got his boots underneath him. Together, him leaning heavily on her slight frame, they staggered toward the idling Honda Civic. Every step was a nightmare. Mike outweighed her by more than 100 pounds, and he was barely conscious enough to help support his own weight. Emma's shoulders burned, her legs shook. But she kept moving, kept dragging him forward, because the alternative was leaving him here to die, and she'd already made her choice. The headlights behind them were getting brighter. She could hear the deep rumble of the SUV's engines, now could see the rain illuminated in harsh strobing flashes as they approached. Emma threw open the back door of the Civic and told Mike to get in, to slide all the way across. Mike practically fell into the back seat, his boots dragging on the pavement before he managed to pull them inside. Blood immediately started soaking into Emma's worn fabric, seats, dark stains spreading across the beige upholstery. Emma sprinted back to the concrete barricade, her feet nearly sliding out from under her on the wet pavement. She grabbed the 2 baby carriers, one in each arm. They were heavier than they looked, solid and awkward, but she didn't have time to adjust her grip. The SUVs were a quarter-mile away now, close enough that Emma could hear the distinctive whoop-whoop of a siren, that short, aggressive burst that cops use to intimidate rather than warn. She ran back to the car, shoving the carriers into the back seat next to Mike's blood-soaked form. The little girl, Lily, reached out a tiny hand, fingers splayed as if trying to grasp onto something solid in a world that had become terrifying chaos. Emma yelled at Mike to hold them secure as she dove into the driver's seat. Mike's arms, even weakened and shaking, wrapped around both carriers with surprising gentleness. Emma slammed the car into drive, but instead of accelerating straight down the road where the SUVs would spot them immediately, she cranked the steering wheel hard to the left. The Civic lurched off the paved surface, plunging into a narrow gap between 2 enormous warehouse buildings. The alleyway was barely wide enough for her car. Scraped metal siding screeched against the passenger side as Emma forced the vehicle deeper into the darkness. She killed the headlights, killed the engine, and the world went suddenly terrifyingly quiet except for the patter of rain on the roof and Mike's wet, labored breathing. Emma hissed at Mike to keep them quiet. If they cried now, if they made any sound, it would all be over. Mike had his face pressed close to the carrier's, his blood-stained features somehow gentle as he looked at his children. And maybe it was his presence, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe babies understood more than anyone gave them credit for, but both Leo and Lily went silent. Their wide eyes fixed on their father, tiny chest rising and falling, with quick, frightened breaths, but no sound. Seconds later, the three black SUVs roared past the mouth of the alleyway. Emma held her breath, watching through her rain-streaked side mirror. The vehicles screeched to a halt right next to Mike's destroyed motorcycle, their tires throwing up a spray of water. Four men emerged from the lead SUV. They weren't wearing police uniforms, but they moved with military precision, tactical gear catching the LED headlights. Each one carried an assault rifle held in a ready position. Leading them was a tall man in a dark trench coat. Even from this distance, even through the rain, in the dark, Emma could see something glinting at his chest. A badge on a chain. Mike's whisper was barely audible. He identified the man as Detective Ray Garrison, head of the Regional Anti-Gang Task Force. Said Garrison had been shaking down the club for over a year, wanted a cut of their legitimate businesses. When the club president told him to go to hell, Garrison decided to make an example. Emma asked if Garrison had shot his wife. Mike's voice cracked as he explained. Garrison had kicked in the door of their house an hour ago, said it was a no-knock warrant for illegal weapons. Sarah told Mike to run with the twins. She held Garrison's men off with a shotgun long enough for Mike to get to the bike. Mike thought he'd make it to the safe house, but they were waiting on the highway. Clipped his back wheel at 90 miles an hour. Emma watched in the mirror as Garrison paced around the wreckage, his posture radiating fury. He kicked a piece of debris, then gestured sharply down the road, pointing toward where Emma had been heading. They thought Mike had fled on foot. They were going to chase a ghost. The men piled back into the SUVs, engines roared, and then they were gone, speeding away into the storm, their taillights disappearing into the darkness. Emma waited, counted to 30, then to 60. The rain continued its relentless percussion on the roof. Finally, she started the engine. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. She said they were gone, that she had to take Mike to a hospital now because he was losing too much blood. Mike's voice was weaker but firm. Garrison had people in every emergency room in the county. If they showed up at a hospital, they'd be dead within an hour. Emma would be dead, and the state would take his kids. He reached into the inner pocket of his vest with trembling fingers and pulled out a small object. Even covered in blood, Emma could see what it was, a USB drive. Mike held it up, the tiny piece of plastic and circuitry catching the faint glow from Emma's dashboard. He said everything he needed to bury Garrison was on this drive. 2 years of recordings, wire transfers, proof of extortion, racketeering, 3 murders. He was supposed to hand this to a federal prosecutor in Los Angeles tomorrow morning. Emma's mind was racing. She said they should call the FBI, call someone. Mike laughed and it turned into a coughing fit that brought up more blood. He asked what she thought would happen. A Hell's Angel calling for help. By the time anyone believed them, Garrison would have found them. Mike needed time. Needed to get patched up somewhere safe. Then they could figure out how to get this evidence to someone who could actually do something with it. Emma said she didn't know how to treat a gunshot wound, that she delivered packages. That was it. She wasn't a doctor. Mike told her she was delivering them now. He gave her directions. Head north on the 99. Take the Oildale exit. There's a chop shop behind a junkyard on Chester Avenue. Ask for Silas. He's a club mechanic, but he used to be a combat medic in Fallujah. He can patch me up. Emma looked at him in the rearview mirror. Mike's skin had gone ashen, his lips taking on a pale, sickly blue tinge. The legendary enforcer, the man who'd supposedly put 3 rival gang members in the hospital with his bare hands last year, looked fragile, breakable. Next to him, Lily's tiny hand reached out and wrapped around one of her father's thick, callous fingers. The contrast was almost unbearable. This enormous, dangerous man and this impossibly small, innocent child. Emma heard herself agree. Oildale. But Mike had to stay awake. He had to. She pulled out of the alleyway, slowly headlights still off until she hit the main road. Then she turned north and pushed the accelerator to the floor. The drive to Oildale was 38 miles that felt like 300. Every pair of headlights in Emma's rearview mirror sent a spike of adrenaline through her system. Every siren in the distance made her flinch. The Civic's four-cylinder engine screamed in protest as she held the speed at 85, then 90, the whole car shuddering like it might shake itself apart. Mike was fading. She could see it happening in real time. His eyes kept drooping, closed his head, lolling to the side. Emma yelled at him, cranking down all the windows. Freezing rain blasted into the car, drenching everything, but the shock of cold air made Mike's eyes snap open. She told him to talk to her, tell her about the twins. Mike's words were slurring together. He said Leo was a fighter, got his mother's temper, screamed for 2 hours straight his first night home from the hospital. Sarah walked him around the house singing this old Johnny Cash song until he finally fell asleep. Emma asked about Lily. Mike smiled, a ghost of an expression. Sweet, he said. So sweet. She likes the sound of the motorcycle. Puts her right to sleep. He'd take her for rides around the block when she was colicky. Sarah said he was crazy putting a baby on a Harley. But Lily loved it. Emma lied and said the Honda was pretty loud. Her piece of shit car was many things, but a Harley it was not. She told Mike to just hold on to them, that they needed him. Mike's voice was barely a whisper now. He promised he wouldn't leave them. The Oildale exit appeared through the rain like salvation. Emma took the turn too fast, the Civic's tires squealing, but she didn't slow down. Mike gave directions in fragmentary bursts, pointing weakly at turns. Left on Chester, right at the tire yard, straight through the gate that's already open. The chop shop materialized out of the darkness like something from a nightmare. A vast corrugated steel building surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Rusted car frames were stacked 3 high around the perimeter. In the rain and the dark, it looked like the kind of place where people went missing and nobody asked questions. Emma pulled up to the main door and laid on the horn. 3 short blasts, too long, just like Mike had instructed with the last of his conscious energy. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the heavy metal door began to rumble upward, revealing harsh fluorescent light in a space filled with half-assembled motorcycles and men wearing leather vests identical to Mike's. Emma drove straight inside, slamming on the brakes. The door rumbled shut behind her, cutting off the rain and the dark and any chance of escape. Instantly, the car was surrounded. 8, maybe 10 men, all of them, large, all of them armed. Hands reached for weapons tucked into waistbands. Hard eyes locked onto Emma through the windows. Emma threw her hands up, kicking her door open. She screamed that she had Mike, that he'd been shot, begging them not to shoot her. The sea of leather parted, and a tall, wiry man with grease-stained hands and a gray beard that reached mid-chest shoved his way through. He took one look into the back seat, and his eyes went wide. His voice carried absolute authority as he barked orders. Get him out. On the table. Now. This had to be Silas. 4 bikers practically ripped the car doors off their hinges, hands sliding under Mike's body with surprising gentleness. They lifted him as a unit, carrying him like pallbearers to a heavy wooden workbench that Silas was frantically clearing of tools and motorcycle parts. Emma scrambled into the back seat and grabbed the baby carriers. Both twins were screaming now, the sudden chaos and bright lights after hours of darkness and fear finally breaking through whatever shock had kept them quiet. One of the bikers, a giant of a man with a shaved head covered in scars, reached for the carriers. Emma flinched back, pulling the babies against her chest protectively. The big man froze, his scarred face surprisingly gentle. He held up his hands, palms out, and told her it was okay, that they were family, that they had them. Emma looked at him, then at the twins, then at Mike being laid out on the workbench with Silas already cutting away his blood-soaked vest. Slowly, reluctantly, she handed the carriers over. The scarred man took them with extreme care, cradling both carriers in arms thick as tree trunks. He carried them to a cleared space near a space heater and set them down carefully, then dropped to his knees to check on them. His huge, tattooed fingers were remarkably gentle as he adjusted their blankets. Emma stood by her blood-soaked Honda dripping rainwater onto the concrete floor, shivering from cold and shock in the adrenaline crash that was starting to hit her system. She'd done it. She'd gotten them here. Mike was in the hands of someone who could help him. She could leave now. Just get in her car, drive away, pretend this never happened. She still had her delivery to make. Still had that $500 bonus waiting if she could get to Bakersfield before dawn. Emma turned toward the bay door, looking for an exit, a way out, a return to normal. Before she made it 3 steps, a hand landed on her shoulder. Heavy, warm through the wet fabric of her jacket. Emma turned slowly to face a man who made even the other bikers look small. He had a salt and pepper beard, eyes like granite chips, and a jagged scar running from his left eyebrow down to his jaw. His leather vest bore a patch the others didn't have. President. His voice was low, dangerous, the kind of quiet that was somehow more threatening than shouting. He asked where she thought she was going, because the way he saw it, she just brought a war to his doorstep, and she was the only witness they had. Emma's mouth went dry. She tried to step back, but the hand on her shoulder was immovable. She said she didn't want any trouble, that Mike was dying, that she couldn't just leave him and the babies. The president gestured toward the workbench, where Silas was elbow deep in Mike's chest cavity. He said trouble was already here. His sergeant-at-arms gets shot by cops. His wife gets murdered. Someone's been planning this for a while, and Emma just happened to drive by at exactly the right time to save him. Emma protested. It wasn't planned. She didn't plan anything. She was just making a delivery. The president's eyes narrowed. At 2 in the morning, on a road that goes nowhere, in the middle of a storm, Emma explained about her GPS glitching, about taking a wrong turn. For a long moment, the president just stared at her. Emma felt like he was looking through her skin, reading every lie she'd ever told, every secret she'd ever kept. Then Silas called out from the workbench. Bullet passed clean through the shoulder. Missed the subclavian artery by maybe 2 millimeters. But he's lost a massive amount of blood. He could stop the bleeding, but Mike needed a transfusion. And he needed it in a real surgical theater. Mike was running out of time. The president still not taking his eyes off Emma. They asked how long. Silas said maybe an hour, maybe 2. After that, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The president finally released Emma's shoulder, but his presence still pinned her in place. He laid out what was going to happen. They were moving Mike to the safe house in Fresno in 5 minutes. Dutch would take the twins. And Emma was going to get in that shitty little Honda and drive away. Forget she ever saw them. Forget Mike. Forget the babies. Forget this place exists. Emma couldn't hide the disbelief in her voice. They were just going to let her go. The president said Emma did right by Mike. Got him here when she could have just driven past. That earned her a clean exit. They owed her Mike's life. Probably those babies' lives too. But if she stayed, she became part of this. And trust me, the president said you don't want that. Emma looked past him to where the scarred biker Dutch was holding Leo, rocking him gently while the baby screamed. Lily was still in her carrier, her cries becoming weak and hoarse. Emma could walk away. Should walk away. This wasn't her family, wasn't her fight, wasn't her world. But then she thought about Mike's words in the car. Sarah held them off so we could escape. A mother who died protecting her children from corrupt cops. And now those children were here surrounded by dangerous men in a building that smelled like motor oil and violence. What would happen to them when Mike didn't make it, because Emma had seen enough gunshot wounds on TV to know that Silas's pessimistic estimate was probably optimistic. Mike was dying. Maybe not in the next hour, but soon. And then Leo and Lily would be orphans. They'd go into the system. The same system that had chewed Emma up and spit her out, that had taken her own baby away and told her she wasn't fit to be a mother at 16. Emma opened her mouth to say something, she didn't even know what, when the sound of screeching tires cut through the garage. One of the bikers stationed near a bank of security monitors shouted, "Company, 3 black SUVs at the front gate, 2 more rolling into the back alley." They were boxed in. Every man in the garage snapped into motion, hands going to weapons positions, being taken behind cover. Emma's blood turned to ice in her veins. Someone yelled, asking how they found them. Several sets of angry eyes turned toward Emma, accusations that she led them right here. Emma's hands went up defensively. She swore she didn't, that she'd killed her headlights, taken back roads. There was no way anyone followed her. The president was already moving toward the twins. He grabbed both carriers, his eyes scanning them with the intensity of someone looking for a bomb. His hands ran along the plastic underside of Leo's seat, feeling searching. Then he found it. A small magnetic device, maybe the size of a quarter, stuck to the bottom of the carrier. The president ripped it free and held it up for everyone to see. GPS tracker. He threw it on the concrete floor and crushed it beneath his boot heel. Garrison wasn't just planning an ambush. He was planning for Mike to run, tag the baby so he could hunt them down later. Outside, amplified by a bullhorn, Detective Garrison's voice boomed across the junkyard, addressing the president by name, Marcus Crawford, saying they knew Mike Donovan was in there, that he was armed and dangerous. Send him out along with the girl and the children, and nobody else has to die tonight. Emma felt her legs turn to water. She grabbed the edge of a nearby work table to keep from collapsing. She whispered that Garrison was going to kill them all, that he couldn't leave witnesses. He knew she saw him at the crash site. He knew Mike had evidence. Stone as she'd learned, the president was called, looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his granite expression. Maybe he saw the terror in her eyes. Maybe he recognized the truth in her words. Or maybe he just finally believed that she hadn't betrayed them. Stone barked orders at Dutch. Take the girl and the twins down into the grease pit. Lock it from the inside. Don't open it for anyone except him. Dutch was already moving, scooping up the carriers in one arm and grabbing Emma's wrist with his free hand. Emma tried to protest, but Dutch was impossibly strong. He dragged her toward a section of floor she hadn't noticed before, a metal grate that covered what looked like a mechanic's inspection trench. Dutch hauled the grate up one-handed, revealing a dark pit about 8 feet deep running the length of the garage. A ladder led down into the oil-smelling darkness. Dutch ordered Emma to get down there. Now. Emma climbed down, her hands slipping on the greasy ladder rungs. Dutch handed her the carriers one at a time, then dropped down beside her. The space was cramped, barely wide enough for the three of them, plus the babies. Dutch pulled the grate closed above them, and Emma heard the click of a lock engaging. Through the metal grate above, she could see the boots of the other bikers taking up defensive positions. Could hear Stone's voice, calm and cold, giving orders. Nobody fires unless he gave the word. Safety's off. If they breach the doors, light them up. From outside, the sound of a breaching charge being set. Then Garrison's voice, again closer now, right at the door. Last chance, Crawford. Send them out or we come in. Stone's response carried across the garage loud enough that Garrison couldn't possibly miss it. Come get them, you murdering son of a bitch. The explosion that followed was deafening. Even down in the grease pit, the concussion wave hit like a physical blow. Emma's ears rang, her vision swam. Above them, through the grate, she saw the front door of the garage blown inward, twisted metal hanging from torn hinges. And then the shooting started. The noise was apocalyptic, inhuman. Emma had never heard gunfire outside of movies, and the reality of it was so much worse than anything she could have imagined. Not neat little pops, but crushing, roaring explosions of sound that made her whole body flinch with each shot. Dust and debris rained down into the pit. Dutch had positioned himself at the top of the ladder, his own weapon drawn, creating a human shield between the chaos above and Emma and the twins. Miraculously, impossibly, the babies had gone quiet. Not from calm, Emma realized, but from pure, overwhelmed shock. They'd cried themselves silent, their tiny bodies rigid with fear, eyes weedy and vacant. Emma gathered both carriers close, pressing them against her chest, trying to use her body to shield them from the noise, from the falling debris, from the terrible reality of what was happening. More explosions above, the heavy boom of shotguns, the rapid staccato of automatic weapons, men screaming orders, screaming in pain. the smell of gunpowder filtering down into the pit, mixing with the oil and gasoline. Emma's mind was moving at light speed, trying to find a way out, a solution, anything. Mike had said there was evidence on that USB drive, proof of Garrison's crimes. But if Garrison killed everyone in this garage, he'd take the drive and destroy it. He'd take the twins, probably kill them too, the only other witnesses. And Emma would die here in a pit beneath a chop shop, having accomplished nothing except maybe prolonging the inevitable by a few hours. No, there had to be another way. She remembered her delivery scanner still in her jacket pocket. It had a satellite hotspot, a premium feature the company paid for so couriers could stay connected even in dead zones. It was slow, barely functional, but it was a connection to the outside world. Emma looked up at Dutch, who was focused on the opening above, ready to shoot anyone who wasn't wearing club colors. She shouted over the gunfire that she needed the USB drive, the one Mike had. Where was it? Dutch glanced down at her like she'd lost her mind. Emma explained about the evidence, that if she could upload it, if she could get it to the FBI, Garrison loses. Even if he kills everyone, he can't cover it up. Something like understanding crossed Dutch's scarred face. He said Stone has it, but she couldn't get to him. He was pinned down by the main door. Emma looked around the pit, desperate. There had to be another way up, another access point. The grease pit ran the entire length of the garage. She asked if there was another exit from this pit, another ladder, a crawl space, anything. Dutch pointed toward the far end, deeper into the darkness. Service hatch, 30 feet that way, comes up behind the parts storage. Emma didn't think. If she thought she'd realize how insane this was. She shoved the baby carriers into Dutch's arms. She told him to keep them safe, to not let anything happen to them. Then she was running, crouched low in the narrow pit, her hands scraping against the concrete walls as she felt her way through the darkness. The gunfire above her was constant now, a rolling thunder that made her eardrums ache. She found the hatch by slamming her shin into the ladder leading up to it. Pain exploded through her leg, but Emma ignored it, climbing fast. The hatch was locked from above. Emma braced her shoulder against it and shoved with everything she had. The lock gave way with a shriek of tortured metal. Emma pushed the hatch open and crawled out into a scene from hell. The garage was a war zone, shattered glass everywhere, motorcycles torn apart by bullet fire. Several of the overhead lights shot out, creating pools of shadow where the dead and dying lay. Stone was exactly where Dutch had said, pinned behind a large metal lathe about 20 feet from Emma's position. He was trading fire with cops who'd taken position behind the ruins of the front door, his face set in grim determination. Emma got down on her stomach and crawled, staying below the line of fire. Bullets sparked off the concrete inches from her head. Someone's boot was right in front of her face. She crawled around it, not looking up to see if its owner was still alive. It took her maybe 30 seconds to cross the 20 feet to Stone's position, but it felt like hours. Finally, she slid up next to him behind the lathe, breathing hard. Stone's head snapped toward her, his eyes wide with fury and disbelief. He demanded to know what the hell she was doing. He told Dutch to keep her in the pit. Emma shouted over the gunfire, demanding the drive. The USB drive. Stone asked if she was insane, told her to get back down. Emma grabbed the front of Stone's vest, forcing him to look at her. She said she could upload it, that she had satellite internet. If they got those files to the FBI, Garrison loses, even if he kills everyone. She pointed out that his guys were dying up here. This was the only way to save them. Stone stared at her for a heartbeat. 2. Then he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out the blood-smeared drive, slapping it into Emma's palm. He yelled that the laptop was on the rolling cart behind the blue Mustang, then returned fire. Emma looked across the garage. The blue Mustang was maybe 40 feet away, sitting in what was currently a no man's land between the bikers' positions and the advancing cops. She'd never make it. The second she broke cover, she'd be cut down. But what choice did she have? Emma took a breath. Then she ran. The world slowed down and sped up simultaneously. Every step felt like moving through syrup, but also like she was moving faster than she'd ever moved in her life. Bullets snapped past her so close she felt the displacement of air. Something hot grazed her arm, a ricochet or a very near miss. She dove behind the Mustang just as a spray of bullets shattered the car's windows, showering her in safety glass. The rolling diagnostic cart was right where Stone said it would be. The laptop was open running. Emma jammed the USB drive into the port. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. The device mounted. Files appeared on screen. Hundreds of them. Audio recordings, video files, spreadsheets, scanned documents. Emma pulled her delivery scanner from her pocket, activated its hotspot, and connected the laptop. The signal was weak, 1 bar, but it was there. She opened an email client. Thank God the laptop had one configured, and started typing addresses from memory. She delivered enough sensitive packages to enough government offices and news organizations to have the important ones memorized. FBI Cybercrimes Division, LA Times Investigative Desk, CNN Tips Hotline, Internal Affairs, every address she could remember. She dragged all the files into a zip folder, attached it to the email, and typed in the subject line, Evidence of Police Corruption, Detective Ray Garrison. Then she hit send. A progress bar appeared. Uploading 1%, 5%, 15%. Someone was shouting nearby. Heavy footsteps on concrete getting closer. 20%, 35%, 50%. The footsteps stopped. Emma looked up. Detective Ray Garrison stood over her, his tactical rifle pointed directly at her forehead. His face was smeared with soot and sweat, his eyes wild with desperation and rage. He said she should have just kept driving. His eyes flicked to the laptop screen. To the progress bar, 72%, 85%, 93%. Garrison raised his boot to stomp the laptop. Emma looked him dead in the eye and smiled. Too late, 100%. Message sent. The sound that came from outside wasn't gunfire. It was sirens. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all screaming in unison as they descended on the junkyard. Red and blue lights flooded through the shattered windows of the garage. Garrison's face went through a series of expressions. Rage to disbelief to the slow, awful realization that everything was over. He lowered his rifle. Slowly he raised his hands above his head. From outside, a voice on a bullhorn, different from Garrison's, professional and calm. This is the FBI. All weapons down. Everyone on the ground. Now. Real authorities. Finally. Emma slumped back against the Mustang's tire, the laptop sliding off her lap onto the concrete. Her whole body was shaking. She was pretty sure she was going into shock. That was fine. She could go into shock. She'd earned it. Around the garage, the shooting stopped. Slowly, reluctantly, weapons clattered to the ground. Bikers and corrupt cops alike dropped to their knees, hands behind their heads. FBI agents in full tactical gear flooded through the broken doors, weapons raised, shouting orders. They separated the bikers from Garrison's men with practiced efficiency. Stone was still standing by the lathe, his hands raised but his eyes locked on Emma. He gave her the smallest nod. Respect, maybe. Or just acknowledgement that this impossible kid had somehow saved them all. Emma tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. That was okay. She could sit here for a minute, just 1 minute to catch her breath. Someone was crying. No, two someones. The twins. Down in the grease pit with Dutch, probably terrified by all the new noise, the new chaos. Emma forced herself to her feet, stumbled toward the pit access. An FBI agent tried to stop her, but she shrugged him off. She said there were babies down there, that they needed her. What did they need? Everything. They needed everything. They needed a mother. The thought hit Emma like a punch to the chest, stealing her breath. No, she couldn't think like that. She wasn't their mother. She was just the person who had happened to drive by at the right time. That was all. But as Dutch climbed out of the grease pit, carrying both carriers, and as Emma took Lily into her arms and felt the baby's tiny body press against her chest, felt Lily's crying quiet to exhausted whimpers, Emma realized something terrifying. She'd broken her own rule. The one rule that had kept her safe for 6 years. She'd attached, and there was no going back now. The FBI's temporary command center smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucracy. Emma sat in a folding chair that was definitely not designed for extended, sitting a thin emergency blanket wrapped around her shoulders despite the building's aggressively overactive heating system. Across the fold-out table, FBI agent Torres, mid-40s, tired eyes wedding ring, worn smooth from years of absent-minded fidgeting, reviewed her statement for what felt like the 100th time. He clicked his pen, a nervous habit that was driving Emma slowly insane. So let me make sure I have this right. She was a courier driver, took a wrong turn due to GPS malfunction, happened upon an active crime scene involving a Hells Angels member who'd just been shot by corrupt police officers. And instead of calling 911, she decided to transport this heavily wounded biker and his infant children to an illegal chop shop in Oildale. Emma met his eyes without flinching. She'd spent the last 4 hours telling this same story, and it had the benefit of being completely true. Yes, and she did all of this out of the goodness of her heart. Emma said she did it because babies were going to die if she didn't. Torres leaned back in his chair studying her. Emma could see him trying to fit her into a category. Good Samaritan, accomplice, something in between. People like Torres, people who lived in the world of clear rules and documented procedures, they didn't know what to do with someone like Emma, someone who'd been raised in the cracks of the system, who'd learned young that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing weren't the same. Torres said the data she uploaded was comprehensive. 2 years of Detective Garrison documenting his own crimes, wire transfers from an offshore account to his personal banking, recordings of him threatening Hells Angels leadership with violence if they didn't pay protection money, video of him and his task force beating a club member unconscious during an illegal search. Emma said nothing, just waited. Torres continued, they also had evidence that linked Garrison to 3 unsolved murders. All MC members who refused to cooperate with his extortion scheme. Rebecca Sullivan, Mike Donovan's wife, she's the 4th attempted murder. The doctors in Tucson say she's lucky to be alive. Emma's head snapped up. She's alive. Torres looked surprised. She didn't know. Mike didn't tell her. Emma asked if Rebecca was going to be okay. Torres' expression softened slightly. She's in a coma, induced to help with the swelling in her brain. The bullets missed all the major organs, but the trauma was severe. It could be days or weeks before they try to wake her up. He paused. The twins don't know their mother's alive. We've kept it classified information in case Garrison had more people on his payroll looking to finish the job. Emma asked if Mike knew. As of 2 hours ago, yes. Stone Crawford informed him once Mike was stable enough to handle the news. Emma processed this, trying to figure out what it meant. Mike's wife wasn't dead. The twins weren't orphans, which meant Emma's role in all of this was finished. She'd saved them, gotten them to safety, helped expose Garrison. Now she could go back to her apartment, her courier job, her carefully constructed life of not getting attached to anyone or anything. That was good. That was what she wanted. So why did her chest feel like someone had hollowed it out? Torres continued. Here's the situation. Detective Garrison is in federal custody, along with 8 members of his task force. We've frozen his accounts, seized his property, and we're building a case that should put him away for multiple life sentences. But he held up a hand before Emma could feel too relieved we hit a complication. The files she uploaded, they're encrypted with some kind of military-grade malware. Our tech team thinks Garrison installed it before Mike stole the drive as a fail-safe. Emma felt her stomach drop. How bad? Torres said they could access maybe 30% of the data. The recordings are corrupted. Most of the financial documents are unreadable. The videos play, but the image quality is degraded beyond usability. What they have is damning, but it might not be enough to convict Garrison on the murder charges. A good defense attorney could argue evidence, tampering, chain of custody issues. Emma asked if he could walk. He's out on bail as we speak. $2 million posted by an anonymous donor, with an ankle monitor and strict travel restrictions, but yes, he's free pending trial. Emma's hands clenched into fists beneath the emergency blanket. He killed Mike's wife. He tried to kill Mike. He tried to kill me. Torres corrected, attempted to kill, and we'll charge him with all of it. But if we can't prove the underlying corruption, if we can't establish the pattern of violence and extortion, then the whole case becomes he said, she said, a decorated detective versus a known criminal motorcycle gang. Emma asks what they do. We hope Mike Donovan wakes up from surgery and tells us where the backup files are. Because according to our interviews, he was paranoid enough about Garrison that he definitely made a backup of that drive. Surgery. The word triggered something in Emma's memory. The last time she'd seen Mike, he had been unconscious on Silas's workbench, blood everywhere, his skin the color of old newspaper. Emma asked if Mike was okay. Stone said they were taking him to a safe house in Fresno. Torres' expression became carefully neutral. Mike survived the initial surgery. Silas removed the bullet, stopped the internal bleeding, gave him a transfusion from a club member with matching blood type. But he's still critical. The FBI has him under protective custody at an undisclosed medical facility. If he wakes up, we'll know. If, not when. Emma swallowed hard against the tightness in her throat. She'd hauled Mike's 250-pound body into her car. She'd kept him conscious on the drive to Oildale. She'd risked her life uploading those files. He couldn't just die now. That wasn't fair. But Emma had learned young that fair was a fairy tale people told themselves. Emma heard herself ask about the twins, Leo and Lily. Where were they now? Torres consulted his notes. Temporary placement with Child Protective Services. Standard procedure when both parents are unavailable. The words hit Emma like ice water. CPS. The same system that had shuffled her from home to home. The same system that had taken her own baby and told her she wasn't fit to be a mother at 16. Emma's voice came out harder than she'd intended. They can't go into the system. They can't. You don't understand what that's like. Torres said gently that it's temporary, just until Mike wakes up and can make arrangements, or until Rebecca recovers enough to. Emma cut him off. And if Mike doesn't wake up, if Rebecca's coma lasts months, years, those babies will be in foster care until someone decides to adopt them. And guess what, Torres? Nobody wants to adopt babies who come with the baggage of murdered parents and gang connections. They'll get bounced around until they're 18, accumulating trauma the whole way. I know. I lived it. Torres looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. What would you suggest instead? Let me take them. The words were out before Emma could stop them, before she could think about what she was saying, what she was offering. Torres blinked. You want to foster 2 infants whose father is in critical condition and whose mother is in a coma. Yes, you're 22 years old. You live alone. You work night shifts as a courier driver. Emma said she could change jobs. She could figure it out. Those babies know me. I kept them safe. I'm not just some stranger. You're also not family. You have no legal relationship to these children. Neither does CPS. Torres considered this for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a man who'd seen too much bureaucratic nonsense in his career to be surprised by one more impossible situation. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club has already filed for emergency custody. Marcus Crawford, the chapter president, claims guardianship rights under club law. He's arguing that Mike Donovan would want his children raised within the M's family structure. Emma's heart sank. Of course Stone would want the twins. They were Mike's kids, MC, royalty, and Stone had the resources to care for them, money, property, protection. Torres continued, however, a judge took one look at that filing and laughed it out of chambers. Motorcycle Club doesn't constitute legal family, and the court isn't about to hand over 2 infants to an organization currently under federal investigation. Hope flickered in Emma's chest. So where does that leave us? In a bureaucratic nightmare. But here's what I can do. I can recommend that you be appointed temporary guardian pending the recovery of one or both biological parents. You'd have to pass a background check, home inspection, and agree to supervise visits from a social worker. I'll do it, whatever it takes. You'd also have to coordinate with the MC. Like it or not, Stone and his people have a vested interest in these children. If Mike wakes up and finds out you cut his club out of his kids' lives, that won't end well for anyone. Emma thought about Stone's hand on her shoulder, heavy and threatening. But she also thought about how gently those same bikers had handled the twins' carriers. How Dutch had positioned himself as a human shield between the babies and the gunfire. I can work with them. Torres studied her for another long moment. Then he pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. There's a social worker named Donna Reeves. She specializes in high-risk placements. I'll call her, explain the situation. If she agrees to take your case, you might have a shot at this. Emma took the card with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're signing up for the hardest job in the world. And if this goes sideways, if Garrison comes after those kids again, you're putting yourself directly in the line of fire. Emma thought about Lily's tiny hand wrapped around her finger, about Leo's eyes so wide and trusting even in the middle of chaos. I'm already in the line of fire. Might as well make it count. 3 days later, Emma stood in the parking lot of a nondescript medical building in Fresno, holding two baby carriers that were getting heavier by the minute. The building looked like a dentist's office from the outside, but Emma knew from Agent Torres's carefully vague directions that this was a secure facility where Mike was recovering. Or not recovering. Torres hadn't been clear on Mike's current status. A familiar figure emerged from the building's front entrance. Stone Crawford looking somehow even more intimidating in the bright afternoon sunlight than he had in the dim garage. He spotted Emma and walked over, his expression unreadable. He asked if the FBI cleared her to visit, supervised visitation as part of my temporary guardianship application. Torres said Mike asked to see the twins. Something flickered across Stone's face. Relief, maybe. He woke up 2 hours ago. First thing he said was, "Where are my kids?" Emma's chest loosened fractionally. Mike was awake. That was good. That was better than the alternative. She asked how he was, alive, pissed off, demanding to know why he's in an FBI facility instead of at the M's safe house. Stone's mouth quirked into something that wasn't quite a smile. So normal, Mike. They walked into the building together, Stone leading the way through a maze of corridors that gradually transitioned from medical office bland to secure facility serious. Armed guards checked IDs at 2 different checkpoints. Security cameras tracked their movement. Finally, they reached a hospital room at the end of a long hallway. Stone knocked once, then opened the door. Mike Donovan sat propped up in the hospital bed, looking about 1,000 times better than the last time Emma had seen him. Still pale, still obviously in pain, but conscious and alert and alive. His left shoulder was heavily bandaged, and an IV drip ran into his arm, but his eyes were clear. Those eyes locked onto the baby carriers Emma was holding, and his entire face transformed. His voice cracked as he said their names. Leo, Lily. He asked Emma to bring them to him, please. Emma carried the carriers to the bedside and set them down carefully. Mike's hands, still bearing those silver skull rings, reached out to touch his children's faces with impossible gentleness. Leo started crying immediately, a sound of recognition and relief. Lily just stared up at her father with those huge eyes, one tiny fist shoved in her mouth. Mike was crying now, tears streaming down his scarred face as he stroked their soft baby hair. He kept saying he was sorry, that he was right here, that he wouldn't leave them again. Emma stepped back, giving them space. Stone moved to stand beside her, and together they watched Mike reunite with his children. Stone said quietly that Emma saved them, when she could have walked away, when she should have walked away. Why? Emma thought about all the possible answers to that question. About foster homes and abuse and a baby girl named Anna, who Emma had held for 10 minutes before the social workers took her away. About the promise she'd made to never let herself care enough to hurt like that again. About how that promise had shattered the moment she'd heard Leo and Lily crying in the rain. Because nobody saved me, and I couldn't stand the idea of them growing up knowing that feeling. Stone nodded slowly. Torres told me about your temporary guardianship application. I'm sure he also told you it's a long shot. He told me you'd need support, references, a stable living situation. Stone pulled out his phone, tapped something, then handed it to Emma. On the screen was a real estate listing, a small house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, modest yard in a quiet neighborhood in Fresno. The price had been marked down to contact for details. Stone explained that the MC owned this property. Previous tenant got arrested for meth production, so it's been sitting empty for 6 months. She could have it. First month free, dirt cheap rent after that. Emma stared at the listing. Why would you do this? Because Mike's going to be in rehabilitation for months. Rebecca's in a coma in Tucson with no timeline for recovery. Those babies need someone who can actually take care of them. Stone's voice was matter of fact. You proved you can handle yourself in a crisis. And more importantly, you proved you give a damn about Leo and Lily. That's more than most people would do. I don't know anything about taking care of babies. Nobody does the first time. You'll figure it out. Stone paused. My old lady Donna, she raised 3 kids. She can teach you the basics. And the club will make sure you have everything you need. Formula diapers, furniture, whatever. It was too much, too generous. Emma knew enough about the world to know that nothing came for free. What do you want in return? Stone's expression hardened slightly. I want regular updates on how those kids are doing. I want to know if you need help, if someone threatens you, if anything seems wrong. And when Mike gets out of rehab, when Rebecca wakes up, you don't fight them for custody. You transition the kids back to their parents without drama. Can you do that? Emma thought about it. Thought about falling in love with Leo and Lily only to have to give them back. That would hurt. That would hurt worse than almost anything. But it was also the right thing to do. Yes, I can do that. From the hospital bed, Mike's voice cut through their conversation. Emma, she turned. Mike was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you for everything, for saving my life, for saving my kids, for being there when nobody else would be. Emma crossed to the bed and placed a gentle hand on his uninjured shoulder. You would have done the same. Any parent would. Not every parent gets the chance. Mike's eyes were haunted. Not every parent deserves it. The weight of those words hung in the air between them. 2 weeks later, Emma sat cross-legged on the floor of her new living room, still mostly empty, except for a second-hand couch and a cheap coffee table, watching Leo try to figure out how to roll over. He'd get halfway there, then flop back onto his back, frustrated. Lily was in her bouncer chair, content to watch her brother struggle. Emma had learned that Lily was the observer, the one who studied situations before acting. Leo was pure determination and volume. Donna Crawford Stone's wife sat on the couch folding an endless mountain of baby clothes. She was in her late 40s with laugh lines around her eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd taught Emma everything from how to properly burp a baby to what the different types of crying meant. She said encouragingly that Leo almost had it. Give him another week. Emma smiled, reaching out to tickle Leo's belly. He rewarded her with a gummy grin and a stream of drool. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. The message was simple. Just a photo. But the blood drained from Emma's face as she processed what she was seeing. It was a picture of this house. Her house. Taken from across the street, maybe from a parked car. The timestamp showed it had been taken 20 minutes ago. And below the image, 3 words. Nice family you've got. The phone slipped from Emma's numb fingers. Donna looked up from her folding, noticed Emma's expression, and was on her feet immediately. What is it? Emma couldn't speak. She just pointed at the phone. Donna picked it up, looked at the screen, and her face went stone cold. She pulled out her own phone and hit a speed dial number. Stone, we have a problem. Someone just sent a threat to Emma's phone. Picture of the house. Message implying they know about the twins. A pause while Stone said something on the other end. No, the kids are fine. We're locked inside, but we need people here now. Donna hung up and looked at Emma with surprising calm. Pack a bag for you and the babies. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Where are we going? Somewhere safer. The primary safe house, the one where Mike was supposed to go after the shooting. Donna was already gathering baby supplies with practiced efficiency. Stone will have a security team here in 3 minutes. We're not taking any chances. Emma's mind was racing. It's Garrison, isn't it? He knows where we are. Maybe, or maybe it's someone else from his task force who didn't get arrested. Either way, we're not staying here to find out. True to Donna's word, 4 motorcycles roared up to the house exactly 3 minutes later. Emma recognized Dutch's scarred face among the bikers, who quickly established a perimeter around the property, while Donna and Emma loaded the babies into a large SUV with tinted windows. The drive to the safe house took 40 minutes, though the bikers made it feel like a presidential motorcade, 2 motorcycles in front of the SUV, 2 behind all of them, scanning constantly for threats. The safe house turned out to be a sprawling ranch property on the outskirts of Fresno, hidden behind tall fences and a locked gate. Stone was waiting when they arrived, his expression grim. He held up an evidence bag containing a phone, not Emma's, a different one. "We found this in a car parked 3 blocks from your place. Disposable cell only used for that one message. No prints, no way to trace it. So we don't know who sent it. We know it's someone who has your phone number and knows where you're staying. That's a very short list." Stone's eyes were hard. Either someone in law enforcement leaked the information or someone in the club did. "I'm going to find out which." Emma looked at the house, at the armed bikers patrolling the perimeter, at Leo and Lily still sleeping peacefully in their car seats despite the chaos of relocation. This was her life now, running, hiding, constantly looking over her shoulder. And she'd chosen it. She'd chosen this the moment she'd stopped to help a bleeding biker on a dark road. How long do we stay here? As long as it takes, until we find whoever sent that message, until Garrison's trial, until we know for sure that you and those babies are safe. Emma nodded, lifting one of the carriers out of the SUV. "Okay, then let's get settled in." The safe house was more comfortable than Emma's empty new rental had been. Fully furnished, stocked with food, and most importantly, equipped with a nursery that suggested this property had housed families before. Stone assigned 2 bikers, Dutch and a younger prospect named Ricky, to permanent security detail. They'd rotate 12-hour shifts, one always awake and armed, while Emma and the baby slept. It should have felt like a prison, but somehow surrounded by dangerous men who'd sworn to protect her, Emma felt safer than she had in years. The days developed a rhythm. Wake up with the twins at 6 in the morning. Feed them, change them, play with them. Donna would visit in the afternoons, bringing supplies and checking on Emma's mental health with the kind of gentle questioning that suggested she'd done this before, helped young women adjust to motherhood under terrible circumstances. Emma's delivery job was obviously on hold. The company had put her on emergency leave after the FBI had interviewed them about her involvement in the Garrison case. She wasn't sure if she even wanted to go back to it. Nights were harder. That's when Emma would lie awake listening to the twins breathe in their cribs and think about Anna, her daughter who'd be 6 years old now, who Emma had only held for 10 minutes before they'd taken her away. Emma had spent 6 years not thinking about Anna, building walls around that pain so thick that nothing could break through. But now, with Leo and Lily sleeping 10 feet away, those walls were crumbling. On the 5th night at the safe house, Emma found herself pulling out her phone and doing something she had sworn she'd never do. She searched for information about the social worker who'd taken Anna, Frank Morrison. What she found made her blood run cold. Frank Morrison, former social worker for Riverside County, currently under investigation for multiple counts of child endangerment and falsifying adoption records. Emma's hands shook as she clicked through news articles. Morrison had been arrested 3 months ago. The investigation had uncovered a scheme where he'd been taking babies from young, vulnerable mothers, mostly foster kids themselves, and placing them with wealthy families willing to pay under the table. He told the mothers their babies had been legally adopted through proper channels. He told the adoptive families the biological mothers had willingly given up their parental rights. Everyone had been lied to. The article included a list of children who'd been illegally adopted through Morrison's scheme. Emma scanned the names, her heart pounding. There, halfway down the list. Anna Grace Morrison, born May 17th, taken from mother Emma Hartley, age 16. Current status, living with Morrison's sister in Riverside under the name Annie Morrison. Emma couldn't breathe. Her daughter, her baby girl, was alive and only 2 hours away, and had been this whole time while Emma thought she'd been adopted by some family in another state. Emma read further. Morrison's sister, Denise Morrison, had apparently been unaware of her brother's crimes. She believed the adoption was legal. She'd been raising Annie as her own daughter for 6 years, completely ignorant of the truth. The article said that in cases where the adoptive family was deemed fit and loving, and where significant time had passed, courts often ruled to keep the child in their current placement to avoid further trauma. But biological parents did have the right to contact and potentially seek visitation rights if they wanted. If they wanted. Emma stared at the screen until the words blurred. She could reach out. She could try to see Anna. After 6 years of thinking her daughter was lost forever, she could actually have a relationship with her. But what would that do to Anna? She was 6 years old. She thought Denise Morrison was her mother. She had a stable home, friends, a school she knew. What right did Emma have to disrupt that? To show up and say, actually, I'm your real mother, and you were stolen from me when you were 2 days old. What kind of trauma would that cause? Emma closed the browser, her eyes burning with tears. She'd spent 6 years running from this pain, and now it had found her anyway. A soft cry from the nursery pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. Lily was awake, fussing in that way that meant she was hungry but not desperate yet. Emma wiped her eyes and went to the nursery, lifting Lily from the crib and settling into the rocking chair with a bottle. Lily latched on immediately, her tiny hands clutching at Emma's shirt. Emma whispered to the baby, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be a mom. I failed at it once already." Lily just kept drinking, her eyes locked on Emma's face. "But I'm going to try. I'm going to try so hard to be what you and Leo need, for however long I get to have you." The next morning, Agent Torres showed up at the safe house with news that wiped all thoughts of Anna from Emma's mind. He said without preamble that they had a problem. The USB drive data. They've been working with their best tech people to decrypt the corrupted files. Stone demanded to know what they'd found. Torres said they discovered something. The malware wasn't just corrupting the files. It was a sophisticated tracking program. Every time someone attempted to access the drive, it pinged a remote server with the location and device information. Emma felt ice slide down her spine. "So when I plugged it into the laptop at the garage, you told whoever set up that server exactly where you were, what device you were using, and when you accessed the files." Torres finally took a sip of coffee, grimacing at the taste. "We traced the server. It's owned by a shell corporation that links back to a private military contractor called Sentinel Solutions." Stone said he'd never heard of them. Most people haven't. They're the kind of company that provides deniable assets for government operations that need to stay off the books. Torres pulled out his phone and showed them a photo. "This is the CEO. Recognize him." Emma stared at the photo. The man was in his late 50s, distinguished looking, wearing an expensive suit. She'd never seen him before in her life, but Stone had. His face went rigid. "That's Marcus Briggs, Ray Garrison's brother-in-law, and his silent partner in the extortion racket." The pieces clicked into place in Emma's mind with horrifying clarity. Garrison was never the top of the food chain. He was just the muscle. Briggs was running the whole operation. Torres confirmed it. And Briggs has resources Garrison never did. Money connections, private military contractors who won't hesitate to kill witnesses. The threatening photo Emma received, that wasn't Garrison. "He's too well monitored right now. It was Briggs letting you know he can reach you anytime he wants." Emma demanded to know what they do. They couldn't just sit here waiting for him to make a move. Torres said they needed that backup data, the uncorrupted version that Mike Donovan supposedly made. It's the only way to bring down Briggs's whole operation and get Emma out from under this target. Stone looked toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. "Mike's being transferred here tonight. He's out of immediate medical danger, and keeping him at the FBI facility makes him too easy to track. We'll ask him about the backup as soon as he arrives." But Emma was thinking about something else, about the way Mike had looked at his children in that hospital room, about the desperate, haunted expression when he'd said, "Not every parent deserves it." Emma said slowly, "Stone, when you told Mike that Rebecca was alive, that she was in a coma in Tucson, how did he react?" Stone's expression shifted, becoming guarded. "Why?" Just answer the question, he cried, asked if she was going to be okay. Standard stuff for a husband whose wife was shot. Did he ask to see her? Stone was quiet for a long moment. No, he didn't. And that doesn't strike you as strange. People process trauma differently. Stone. Emma locked eyes with the MC president. What aren't you telling me about Mike and Rebecca? It was Torres who answered, his voice carefully neutral. The FBI investigation into Garrison's operation uncovered some additional information about the Donovans' marriage. Rebecca Sullivan filed 3 domestic violence reports against Mike over the past 2 years. All of them were withdrawn before they could result in charges. Emma felt like she'd been punched. Mike was abusing Rebecca. We don't know the full story, Stone said quickly. Rebecca never followed through with the reports. Could have been coercion, could have been something else. Could have been she was terrified of him. Emma shot back. Could have been he was beating her and she was trapped. Torres interjected, or could have been their relationship was complicated in ways that don't fit neatly into boxes. The point is, it's another layer to the situation that you need to be aware of. Emma looked toward the nursery where Leo and Lily were sleeping. Their father was a Hell's Angel who might have been abusing their mother. Their mother was in a coma with no guarantee of recovery, and their temporary guardian was a 22-year-old former foster kid who barely knew how to take care of herself, let alone 2 infants. This was a disaster. This whole situation was a complete disaster. When Mike gets here tonight, Emma said firmly, I want answers. About the backup data, about Rebecca, about all of it. No more secrets. Stone and Torres exchanged a look. Then Stone nodded. Agreed. No more secrets. But Emma was learning that in this world of motorcycles and corruption and violence, secrets were currency. And the truth was almost always more dangerous than the lies. Mike arrived at the safe house just after midnight, supported by Silas on one side and another club member Emma didn't recognize on the other. He'd lost weight in the weeks since Emma had last seen him, his face gaunt and drawn with pain that went deeper than physical injury. They settled him in the master bedroom, propped up with pillows while Donna checked his vitals with practiced efficiency. Emma stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting. When everyone else had cleared out, when it was just Emma and Mike, and the sound of the twins sleeping in the nursery down the hall, Mike finally spoke. You want to know about Rebecca? It wasn't a question. Yeah, I do. Mike was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Those hands that could cradle an infant so gently that wore skull rings and carried weapons. I met Rebecca when I was 26. She was 19, working as a waitress at a bar the club frequented. Sweetest girl I'd ever met. Saw me, really saw me, and didn't run screaming. He smiled, but it was a bitter expression. I loved her. I loved her so much, it scared me. And I was so terrified I'd lose her that I became the exact thing she should have run from. Mike's voice cracked. I never hit her, never laid a hand on her in anger, but I controlled her, isolated her from her friends, from her family, made her dependent on me for everything. And when she tried to leave, when she tried to get help, I'd talk her out of it, make promises I never kept. The domestic violence reports. She filed them when she found the courage. I convinced her to withdraw them every time. Mike looked up, meeting Emma's eyes. I'm a monster. I'm a monster who somehow got blessed with 2 perfect kids and a wife who deserved better than me in every way. Then why did Garrison target you? If you were already destroying your family from the inside, why did he need to do it? Because Rebecca was finally done with me. She contacted a divorce attorney, was planning to take the twins and leave. She gathered evidence of the club's business dealings, not illegal stuff, but enough to establish that I was part of an organization that made me an unfit parent. Mike's hands clenched into fists. She was going to get full custody, and she deserved it. So what does this have to do with Garrison? Garrison found out about Rebecca's plans, saw an opportunity. He approached me 3 months ago with a deal. I give him the dirt on Stone on our legitimate business operations he could exploit, and in exchange, he'd make Rebecca's divorce case disappear. Make it so she couldn't take my kids from me. Emma's breath caught. You were working with Garrison for about 2 weeks. Then I realized what he really wanted, total control over the club. He wasn't just going to take a cut, he was going to own us, run us like his personal criminal empire. Mike's voice was hollow, so I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every transaction. I was going to burn him before he could burn us, but he found out. Rebecca found the USB drive, confronted me about it. I told her everything, about Garrison, about my plan to expose him, about how dangerous it had gotten. Mike's eyes were wet. She told me she was going to help me, that we'd take down Garrison together, and then she was still going to divorce me and take the kids, but at least they'd be safe from corrupt cops. So the raid. Was Garrison realizing I'd betrayed him? He came to kill all of us. Rebecca fought back long enough for me to escape with Leo and Lily. Mike wiped his eyes roughly. She saved them. After everything I put her through, she still saved our kids. Emma processed all of this, trying to fit it into what she thought she knew about this situation. Where's the backup data? Mike laughed a broken sound. That's the thing. There is no backup data. Emma stared at him. What? The USB drive Rebecca found, that was the only copy. I was paranoid. Yeah, but I was also stupid. I thought having multiple copies was more dangerous, more chances for Garrison to find them. So I kept everything in one place. Mike met her eyes. The files you uploaded, corrupt as they are, they're all we have. Then how do we stop Briggs? How do we protect the twins? I don't know. I don't know, and I'm sorry, but I don't have an answer. I failed Rebecca. I'm failing my kids. And now I've dragged you into this mess, and I can't even give you the tools to fix it. Emma wanted to be angry, wanted to scream at him for being weak, for making terrible choices that had led to this nightmare. But she looked at his face, at the genuine anguish there, and she just felt tired. The twins don't know any of this. All they know is that their dad loves them and their mom fought to save them. That's the story they're going to grow up with. Not the complicated, messy truth, just the love. You understand? Mike nodded, unable to speak. And you're going to get better. You're going to do whatever physical therapy or counseling or work you need to do to become the father they deserve. Because Rebecca might wake up from that coma, and when she does, she's going to need to know that you stepped up, that you changed. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. Emma turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Mike, if I ever find out you've gone back to those controlling behaviors, if you ever make Rebecca or anyone else feel trapped and scared, I will personally make sure you never see those kids again. MC or no MC, are we clear? Mike nodded. Crystal clear. Emma walked out, closing the door behind her. She made it halfway down the hall before her knees gave out, and she had to catch herself against the wall. No backup data, which meant they were trapped in this situation with no clear way out. Briggs could come for them anytime. Garrison might beat the charges. And Emma was responsible for 2 babies whose entire family was broken in ways she couldn't fix. From the nursery, she heard Lily start to cry. Then Leo joined in their voices, rising in that particular harmony of twins who needed something right now. Emma pushed herself upright and went to them. Because that's what you did when you were a parent, even a temporary one. You got up, you showed up, you took care of the ones who needed you. Even when you had no idea what you were doing. Even when the world was falling apart around you. You got up anyway. The call came at 3:47 in the morning on a Tuesday, 6 weeks after Emma had moved into the safe house. She was already awake. Leo had an ear infection that made him fussy at night. So when her phone buzzed with an unknown Arizona number, she answered it immediately. A woman's voice, professional but warm, asked if this was Emma Hartley. Yes. This is Dr. Sarah Chen calling from Desert Valley Medical Center in Tucson. I'm calling about Rebecca Sullivan. Emma's heart stopped. Is she? She's awake. The words hung in the air for a moment while Emma's brain processed them. The doctor continued. We brought her out of the induced coma yesterday morning. She's been asking for her children. Emma looked toward the nursery where both twins were finally sleeping. How is she? Physically, she's recovering well. The gunshot wounds are healing, but there's been some complications with memory. Traumatic brain injuries are unpredictable. Rebecca's experiencing what we call dissociative amnesia. She has gaps in her memory, particularly surrounding the traumatic event. What kind of gaps? She doesn't remember the raid, doesn't remember being shot. Her last clear memory is from about 18 months ago. Dr. Chen paused. She doesn't remember being pregnant with the twins, doesn't remember giving birth. When we told her she has two children, she became very distressed. Emma felt cold spreading through her chest. So she doesn't know Leo and Lily exist. Not currently, no. The neurologist believes the memories may return with time and proper therapy. But for now, we're dealing with a woman who's essentially lost nearly 2 years of her life. Have you told her about Mike, about what happened? We've given her the basic facts, that there was a raid by corrupt police officers, that her husband and children survived, that she's been in a coma for 6 weeks. Another pause. She's asked to see the twins. We wanted to get your permission first since you're their current legal guardian. Emma thought about it. Rebecca didn't remember her own children, didn't remember loving them, carrying them, giving birth to them. What would happen when she saw them? Would it trigger her memories? Or would it just be traumatic being handed two babies and told they were hers? I'll bring them. Tomorrow, we'll drive down. That would be wonderful. I think seeing them might help with her recovery. Dr. Chen gave Emma the details, visiting hours, what floor, what to bring. After hanging up, Emma sat in the dark living room for a long time just thinking. If Rebecca recovered her memories, if she became able to care for the twins again, Emma's job would be done. She'd transition Leo and Lily back to their mother and walk away. That was the deal she'd made with Stone. That was what she'd agreed to. So why did the thought make her want to cross? The drive to Tucson took 4 hours with Stone insisting on a full escort. 2 SUVs, 4 motorcycles, enough firepower to discourage any attempt by Briggs or his people to make a move. Emma sat in the back of the lead SUV with the twins watching Arizona's desert landscape scroll past and trying to prepare herself for this meeting. What did you say to a woman who'd saved her children but couldn't remember they existed? The hospital was smaller than Emma expected, tucked into a quiet neighborhood far from the main city. Security was tight, FBI agents in the lobby more stationed on Rebecca's floor. This was still a woman marked for death by powerful people. Dr. Chen met them outside Rebecca's room. She was younger than Emma had expected from her voice, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and the sort of calm competence Emma associated with people who dealt with trauma regularly. She knows you're coming. She's nervous. We've shown her photos of the twins, but seeing them in person will be different. Emma asked if Mike was here. He arrived an hour ago. He's in with her now. Stone, who'd accompanied Emma inside while the other bikers maintained perimeter security, frowned. How's that going? Complicated. Rebecca's memories of their relationship are from the early days when things were good. She doesn't remember the past year or the problems, the reports she filed. Dr. Chen looked between them. She thinks they're happily married. Emma and Stone exchanged a look. Of course, that's what would happen. Mike's been honest with her, told her about the problems in their marriage, about the controlling behavior. She's processing. Can we go in? Dr. Chen nodded and opened the door. The hospital room was private, spacious, filled with flowers. Dozens of bouquets from MC members and their families. Rebecca sat propped up in bed, still attached to monitors, but looking remarkably healthy for someone who'd been in a coma 6 weeks. She was beautiful. That was Emma's first thought. Soft brown hair, delicate features, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much too fast. She was maybe 25, 26, young to have been through everything she'd been through. Mike sat in a chair beside the bed, his posture tense. He looked up when Emma entered, relief and anxiety warring on his face. Rebecca's eyes went immediately to the baby carriers Emma was holding. Her voice was soft, uncertain. Those are my children, Emma confirmed. Leo and Lily. They're 6 months old now. Do you want to hold one? Rebecca's hands were shaking as she reached out. Emma carefully lifted Lily from her carrier and placed her in Rebecca's arms. For a long moment, Rebecca just stared at the baby in her arms. Lily, for her part, was being remarkably calm, her big eyes fixed on this stranger's face, with infant curiosity. Then Rebecca started crying, silent tears streaming down her face as she held her daughter. Rebecca whispered that she didn't remember her, that she was her mother and she didn't remember her. She was so sorry. Lily reached up with one tiny hand and grabbed Rebecca's finger, the same gesture she'd made with Emma a dozen times, the universal baby signal. I'm here, you're here, we're connected. Rebecca's tears came harder. She's beautiful. They're both beautiful. She looked up at Mike. How could I forget this? How could I forget being pregnant, giving birth 6 months of their lives? Mike said gently that the doctor said the memories might come back. Give it time. Rebecca's voice broke. What if they don't? What if I never remember? What kind of mother doesn't remember her own children? Emma found herself speaking before she'd consciously decided to. The kind who fought off corrupt cops to save them. The kind who held off a raid long enough for their father to escape with them. The kind who took 2 bullets protecting them. Rebecca looked at Emma as if really seeing her for the first time. You're Emma, the courier driver who saved them. I just drove them to people who could help. Mike told me what you did, how you risked everything. Rebecca shifted Lily in her arms, still crying, but smiling now. You've been taking care of them. Temporary guardianship. Until you were well enough to. Thank you. Rebecca's voice was fierce despite the tears. Thank you for protecting my babies when I couldn't. Emma had to look away, the emotion in the room too much to handle. She busied herself lifting Leo from his carrier and sitting in the other chair, holding him so he could see his mother. They spent an hour in that room. Rebecca held both twins, awkward at first, but gradually finding a rhythm. Emma coached her through it. How to support Leo's head, how to recognize when Lily was getting tired. All the little things Emma had learned over 6 weeks of intensive on-the-job training. Mike watched it all with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. Grief maybe, or regret, or hope. Probably all three. Finally, Dr. Chen returned and gently suggested that Rebecca needed rest. The twins were getting fussy anyway, ready for their afternoon naps. Rebecca asked if she could see them again tomorrow. Every day if you want, I'll bring them every day until you're discharged. And after that, Emma hesitated. We'll figure it out. Outside in the hallway, Stone was waiting. He took one look at Emma's face and asked if it was that bad, that complicated. Emma looked down at the twins, both of them already dozing off in their carriers. She wants to be their mother, but she doesn't know how. And I've spent 6 weeks learning how, but I'm not their mother. Sounds like you need to figure out how to work together. Yeah, because that won't be awkward at all. They made the drive back to Fresno in silence. Emma lost in her thoughts. She'd known this day would come eventually. The day she'd have to start transitioning the twins back to their biological family. But she hadn't expected it to feel like this, like losing something she never really had in the first place. The safe house felt too quiet after they returned. Emma went through the evening routine on autopilot. Dinner for the twins, bath time, bedtime stories, goodnight songs. By the time both babies were asleep, she was exhausted. She was halfway to her own bedroom when she heard voices from the kitchen, Stone and Mike talking in low, urgent tones. Emma knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but she also knew that secrets in this house had a way of becoming deadly, so she moved quietly closer. Mike was saying they couldn't tell her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Stone countered. She has a right to know. Emma risked her life for those kids. For you, she deserves the truth. The truth will put her in more danger than she's already in. She's already a target. Briggs knows where she lives, knows she has the twins. Telling her about Stone cut off abruptly as Emma stepped into the kitchen doorway. Both men turned to look at her. Guilty expressions like teenagers caught sneaking out. Tell me about what? Stone and Mike exchanged a glance. Some kind of silent communication Emma wasn't privy to. Finally, Stone sighed. Tell her, she'll find out anyway. Mike rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture of pure exhaustion and defeat. You remember I told you there was no backup of the USB drive data? Yes, I lied. Emma went very still. Excuse me. There is a backup. I couldn't tell you where it was because the location is so insane that nobody would believe it. Mike looked up at her with haunted eyes. The backup isn't stored on a drive. It's stored in Leo. Emma's brain short-circuited. I'm sorry, what? Micro SD card. Surgically implanted subcutaneously behind his left ear when he was 3 months old. The club has a doctor who does this kind of thing for members who need to hide data they can't risk losing. Small incision local anesthetic heals in a week. Emma felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. You put a computer chip inside your baby. I know how it sounds. You put a computer chip inside your baby. Emma's voice was rising now, fury, overwhelming shock. What is wrong with you? Mike stood up, wincing at the pain the sudden movement caused his still healing shoulder. I had to. Garrison was closing in. I knew he'd come for me eventually. The chip was insurance. If I died, if the drive was destroyed, the data would still exist. Inside your infant son, it's harmless. The technology is completely safe. Safe. Emma laughed a bitter sound. Safe is not implanting foreign objects into babies. Safe is not using your children as storage devices for evidence in a criminal case. Stone held up a hand. Emma, I know this is. Do not tell me to calm down right now. She turned back to Mike. Does Rebecca know? Mike's silence was answer enough. You didn't tell her. You put something inside your son's body without his mother's knowledge or consent. I did what I had to do to protect my family. You violated your family. Emma was shaking now, adrenaline and rage making her hands tremble. You violated a helpless infant because you couldn't think of a better solution to your problems. Mike started to protest, but Emma cut him off. How do we get it out? The chip. How do we extract it? Simple outpatient surgery. 10 minutes local anesthetic, tiny incision. And when were you planning to do this surgery? Before or after you told Rebecca that her son has been walking around with evidence inside him that makes him a target for a private military contractor? The question hung in the air. I was trying to figure out the right time. There is no right time for this. Emma wanted to throw something, wanted to scream, wanted to shake Mike until he understood how deeply he'd fucked up. Briggs knows about the chip, doesn't he? That's why he's been tracking us. That's why he sent that photo. He's waiting for the right moment to take Leo and extract the data himself. Stone's expression confirmed it. We think so, yes. And you were just going to let me keep walking around with Leo, not knowing that he's carrying the one thing Briggs wants most in the world. We have security. Security didn't stop Briggs from finding my house. Didn't stop him from taking a photo from across the street. Emma's voice cracked. You put that baby at risk. You put both of them at risk. And you lied to me about it. She turned and walked out of the kitchen down the hall into her bedroom. Slammed the door hard enough to make the walls shake. Then she slid down to the floor and cried. Not gentle tears, ugly gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside her. Because she trusted these people. She'd put her life in their hands, had believed they were all working together to protect Leo and Lily. But they'd lied. They'd kept secrets that could get those babies killed. And Emma didn't know what to do about it. She must have fallen asleep on the floor, because the next thing she knew, pale morning light was filtering through the curtains and someone was knocking softly on her door. Donna's voice. Can I come in? Emma dragged herself upright, every muscle in her body aching from sleeping on hardwood. It's open. Donna entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee and the expression of a woman who'd had to clean up after men's stupidity more times than she could count. She handed 1 mug to Emma and sat down on the edge of the bed. Stone told me what happened, what Mike did with the chip. Did you know? Not until last night. Stone kept it compartmentalized. Thought the fewer people who knew, the safer everyone would be. Donna took a sip of her coffee. He was wrong, Mike was wrong, and they both know it. Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug, not trusting herself to speak. Here's what's going to happen. Today we're taking Leo to the doctor. We're removing that chip safely and properly. Then we're uploading the data to every news organization and law enforcement agency in the country. We're flooding the zone so completely that Briggs can't suppress it all. And then, and then Leo and Lily stop being targets. Because the data will be public, there'll be no point in coming after them. It made sense. It was logical. But Emma had learned that logic didn't always survive contact with people like Marcus Briggs. What if Briggs comes after them anyway? What if he wants revenge? What if he sees them as loose ends? Then we deal with it. Donna's voice was steel wrapped in gentleness. But we don't keep lying to each other. No more secrets. We face this together, all of us, or we lose. Emma thought about that. About Rebecca in her hospital bed trying to bond with children she didn't remember. About Mike broken and desperate and making terrible choices. About Stone trying to protect everyone and failing. About herself, a 22-year-old who'd stumbled into this nightmare and somehow become essential to its resolution. Okay, together. But I have conditions. Name them. I want to be in the room when you tell Rebecca about the chip. She deserves to hear it from us, not find out later. Agreed. And after the data goes public, after Briggs is arrested or neutralized, or whatever the FBI is planning to do with him, I want regular visitation rights. With both twins, in writing, legal, and binding. Donna smiled, planning to stick around. They're not my kids. They'll never be my kids. But I've been their mom for 6 weeks, and I can't just walk away like that never happened. Rebecca doesn't have to share custody or anything official. I just want to be in their lives. Want them to know that I loved them when their mother couldn't. I think Rebecca would want that too. From what Stone tells me, she's grateful for what you've done. Wants to find a way to co-parent once she's discharged. Emma let herself hope just for a moment that this could work. That somehow, despite all the trauma and violence and broken trust, they could create something good for Leo and Lily. The surgery to remove the chip was scheduled for that afternoon at the MC's underground medical facility, the same place where Silas had operated on Mike after the shooting. Emma insisted on being in the operating room holding Leo's tiny hand while the doctor made the incision. The procedure took 7 minutes. The micro SD card was smaller than Emma expected, barely larger than her fingernail. Such a tiny thing to have caused so much chaos. The doctor cleaned and bandaged the incision site, and Leo woke up from the light sedation fussy, but healthy. Emma held him while they waited for the doctor to confirm there were no complications, rocking him gently and singing the lullaby she'd been using since that first night in the grease pit. Stone came in carrying a laptop, ready to end this. Emma looked down at Leo, at his big eyes staring up at her with perfect baby trust. Do it. They uploaded the data in the same way Emma had at the garage. Mass email to every major news outlet, law enforcement agency, and government watchdog organization they could think of. But this time there was no encryption, no malware, just clean, damning evidence of Marcus Briggs' crimes. The response was immediate. Within an hour, every major news network was running the story. Private military contractor linked to police corruption ring. The financial records showed Briggs had been running protection rackets across 3 states using corrupt cops as enforcers. The audio recordings captured him ordering murders. The video files showed his contractors executing witnesses. It was over. Or so Emma thought. The attack came at 2:14 in the morning, the same time Emma had first found Mike bleeding on that dark road 6 weeks and a lifetime ago. Emma woke to the sound of breaking glass, gunfire, men shouting. She was out of bed instantly, running to the nursery on pure instinct. Got there just as a masked figure in tactical gear came through the window. Emma didn't think. She grabbed the first thing her hand found at a heavy wooden rocking chair and swung it with all her strength at the intruder's head. The chair connected with a satisfying crack. The man went down. Emma grabbed both baby carriers, thank God she'd started keeping them preloaded with ready-to-go supplies, and ran for the door. The hallway was chaos. Smoke, gunfire, shadows moving in the darkness. Emma saw Dutch go down, blood spraying from his shoulder. Saw Stone firing from the top of the stairs, forcing back attackers trying to breach the front door. Stone's voice cut through the chaos. Emma, back door, now. Emma ran carriers clutched against her chest, the twins screaming inside them. She hit the back door at full speed, bursting out into the night, right into the arms of Marcus Briggs. He was older than his photos gray at the temples, but his eyes were young and cold and absolutely certain. He held a pistol in one hand pointed casually at Emma's head. "Hello, Emma. I believe you have something that belongs to me. The data's public. The whole world knows what you did. Killing me won't change that." "True," Briggs smiled, "but it will make me feel better." He moved the gun fractionally, aiming now at the carrier in Emma's right hand, at Leo. "Or maybe I'll start with one of Mike's brats, as a message to anyone else who thinks they can cross me." Emma's world narrowed to that gun, to the casual cruelty in Briggs's expression, to the understanding that she was about to watch a baby die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Then a shot rang out. Briggs stumbled, looking down in surprise at the red blooming across his chest. Behind him, supported by two nurses, stood Rebecca Sullivan. She held a pistol in both hands, something small and efficient, probably taken from one of Briggs's own men, aimed with the kind of steady certainty that spoke to training Emma hadn't known she possessed. "Nobody touches my children." Briggs fell to his knees, then forward onto his face. Emma just stood there, carriers clutched against her chest, staring at the woman who'd saved them. Rebecca was crying and pale and clearly in no condition to be standing, let alone shooting people. But she'd done it anyway, because that's what mothers did. They showed up. They protected. Even when they couldn't remember 9 months of pregnancy and 6 months of watching their babies grow. Even when it terrified them. Even when it was impossible. The aftermath was a blur. More FBI agents than Emma could count SWAT teams securing the property ambulances for the wounded. Briggs died en route to the hospital, his entire operation unraveling as his contractors flipped on each other, trying to cut deals. Detective Garrison, faced with overwhelming evidence and no benefactor to pay his legal fees, pleaded guilty to all charges. Life without parole. It was over. Really, truly over. Emma sat in the back of an ambulance, letting a paramedic check her for injuries, while Stone coordinated with Agent Torres about next steps. The twins were with Rebecca, who refused to let them out of her sight despite the doctor's insistence that she should be in bed. The paramedic said she was good, couple of bruises, some cuts from the glass, but nothing serious. Emma hopped down from the ambulance and walked over to where Rebecca sat on the back steps of the safe house. A twin in each arm, flanked by Donna, who was watching her with concerned mother-hen intensity. "Hey." Rebecca looked up. Her eyes were red from crying, her face exhausted, but there was something new there. A fierceness. A certainty. "I remembered. When I saw Briggs pointing that gun at Leo, everything came back. The pregnancy, the birth Mike's controlling behavior, the fear, the love, all of it." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I remembered being their mother." Emma sat down beside her. "That's good. That's really good. I also remembered that you saved them, that you've been taking care of them while I was." Rebecca trailed off, unable to find words for what she'd been. "Mike told me what you said about wanting visitation rights, only if you're comfortable with it. I don't want to intrude. I want you in their lives." Rebecca's voice was firm. "You're not intruding. You're part of their story now, part of our family if you want to be." Emma looked at Leo and Lily, both of them calm now, nestled against their mother's chest. They were where they belonged, with their mom, their real mom. But Rebecca was right. Emma was part of their story. She'd always be the person who had stopped to help on a dark road, who'd chosen to stay when she could have run, who'd loved them when they needed it most. "Yeah, I like to be family." Donna reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "Good, because these two need all the family they can get." 6 months later, Emma stood in a park in Riverside, California, watching from a distance as a little girl played on the swings. Annie Morrison was 6 years old, blonde hair, in pigtails, wearing a pink dress that matched the streamers on her bike nearby. She laughed as she swung higher, her adoptive mother, Denise Morrison, pushing her with a smile. Emma had been standing there for 20 minutes just watching, trying to memorize every detail of her daughter's face. Denise had been cleared of any wrongdoing in her brother's adoption scheme. She genuinely believed the adoption was legal, genuinely loved Annie as her own daughter, and when the courts had reviewed the case, they'd ruled in favor of maintaining stability. Annie would stay with Denise, but Emma would be granted limited visitation rights once Annie was old enough to understand the situation. Emma could fight it, could push for more, but watching Annie swing and laugh and call higher mom to Denise, Emma knew the courts had been right. This was Annie's family. This was where she belonged. Emma would be part of her life eventually. When Annie turned 18, they'd have a conversation about the truth of her adoption, about Emma being her biological mother, about the choices that had been made, and the love that had existed despite the separation. But for now, Annie got to be a kid, got to swing without the weight of trauma and complicated history. Emma pulled out her phone and snapped a single photo. Just Annie, mid-swing, joy on her face, frozen in a perfect moment. Then she turned and walked back to her car where Leo and Lily waited in their car seats, Rebecca in the passenger seat, and a whole different life waiting to be lived. "You okay?" Rebecca asked as Emma climbed behind the wheel. Emma looked at the photo one more time, then tucked her phone away. "Yeah, I'm okay." They drove back to Fresno to the small house Emma now rented with Stone's help to the life Emma had built from the wreckage of that terrible night. Mike was out of rehab working construction and attending court-mandated therapy. He saw the twins 3 times a week, supervise visits, while he proved he could be the father they deserved. It was slow work, hard work, but he was doing it. Rebecca had taken a job at a nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors, turned her trauma into purpose. She and Emma had worked out a co-parenting arrangement that would have seemed bizarre to anyone outside their situation. Emma took the twins 3 nights a week, Rebecca had them 4, and they traded off on holidays. It shouldn't have worked, but it did, because they had all learned the same lesson on that dark road 6 weeks ago. Family wasn't about blood, it was about showing up, about choosing each other, about doing the impossible because the alternative was unthinkable. Emma pulled into her driveway and killed the engine. Leo immediately started fussing. He always did when the car stopped, like he'd been personally offended by the lack of motion. "Somebody's hungry." Rebecca laughed, getting Lily. "When isn't he hungry? This boy could eat his weight in formula." They carried the twins inside into the warmth and the normalcy, in the beautiful mundane routine of bottle time and diaper changes, in the million tiny moments that made up a life. And Emma thought about that night on Route 99, about the choice she'd made to stop instead of driving past, about how that one decision had unraveled her entire carefully constructed existence and rebuilt it into something she never could have imagined. She'd lost Anna, maybe permanently, maybe just for now. But she'd found Leo and Lily, found Rebecca, found a family that was messy and complicated and absolutely nothing like the fairy tale version Emma had dreamed about as a kid in foster care. It was better, because it was real. Emma settled into the rocking chair with Leo while Rebecca took Lily to the couch. The babies ate hungrily, their eyes already drooping towards sleep. "What are you thinking about?" Rebecca asked softly. Emma looked at the woman who'd become her friend, her co-parent, her family. "I was thinking about packages, about delivery." Rebecca smiled. "Your old job, sort of." Emma shifted Leo in her arms, supporting his head as he finished his bottle. "I spent 2 years delivering packages for people. Important documents, urgent parcels, things that couldn't wait. I thought that was the most important delivery work a person could do. And now I know I was wrong." Emma looked down at Leo's sleepy face at Lily, already snoring in Rebecca's arms. "The most important thing I ever delivered was hope. To a dying man on a dark road. To 2 babies who needed someone to fight for them. To myself when I thought I'd never deserve a second chance." Rebecca's eyes were wet. "You delivered all of us to each other." "Yeah, I guess I did." Outside, the sun was setting over Fresno, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple. A new day ending, another one waiting to begin. And Emma Hartley, former foster kid, former courier driver, current mother in every way that mattered, sat in her living room with her family and felt for the first time in her life like she was exactly where she belonged. She delivered herself home, and that it turned out was the only package that had ever really mattered.